Man, it was years ago. The girls were little. I don't even think Samuel had been born yet. And my sister-in-law, Lydia's sister, was visiting. And we had a little bit of miscommunication. She had asked, do we lock the front door? And we had said yes, not realizing that she was talking about our inner front door. We have an outer front door that has a code. So, we lock it in the sense of, we shut it and it locks behind, not realizing that she was actually turning the lock on the knob. So we came home Sunday carrying little children in their carriers, only to realize we were locked out of the house. Now, I'm one of those that when I see a problem, I assume I can figure out how to fix it. And I know that we are notorious for leaving windows unlocked. So I spend the next few minutes going around the first floor, pushing on windows a little bit at a time, hoping that we've left one unlocked. And we hadn't. But then it hit me. It was still springtime, a time like this, where the temperature comes and goes, so I knew our window had to be open on the second floor. So I get the brilliant idea that, hey, I know our neighbor has an extension ladder that they keep outside, and if I prop it up against the other side of the house of our neighbors, I can just kind of crawl over and get in through the window there. And it's as I'm doing this, as I'm about halfway over the driveway to get into this window, that I realize, man, if anyone sees me right now, they are calling the cops. It just dawned on me, that's what I look like. Anyone who comes in through another way other than the door immediately is seen as a thief or a robber. That's what Jesus is talking about in this message. He says, no. The sheep are in the pen, and he gives this illustration and says, anyone who comes over the wall is clearly not supposed to be there. Anyone who comes to the gate, the gatekeeper lets them in. The sheep know the voice, and they know who it is. And this is the passage that he gives, trying to explain who he is coming to the people. But it's fascinating because he gives that short illustration in verses 1 through 5, and they don't get it. And unlike other times, Jesus decides to explain a little further. And that's where I want to pick up our message today. Ooh, maybe not. Hey, you might have to control my slides. So he explained it to them. I tell you the truth. I am the gate for the sheep. All who came before me were thieves and robbers, but the true sheep did not listen to them. Now, you got to understand where we are in the story. Remember, last week we talked about I am the light, and this whole festival's been going on, and Jesus is getting really, really frustrated with the Pharisees. Then there's the healing of the blind man, which we're actually going to come back to in a second. And then we pick up in this story here. So the assumption is he is still a part of this festival near the end, and that he is still dealing with this frustration of these Pharisees, these leaders of the law, who have not understood what Jesus is trying to get at. And he's frustrated because they're making it harder on the people. And so he switches it and says, no, actually, I am the gate. I'm the one who decides who comes and who goes, who enters. And anyone else is a thief and a robber. All those who have come before me. You see, he was getting frustrated because he was tired of hearing these stories of the Pharisees shutting the door on his people. I don't know if you've ever had that experience of someone actually shutting the door in your face. It is not a fun experience. I don't recommend it. I actually had that opportunity back in my other ministry. It was early on. We were having some leadership issues. The senior preacher at the time, who I started with, was getting frustrated. I always like to say it's when two egos come into a room, it's never a good sign. And that's what was going on. And so each of our elders' meetings had gotten more and more heated over the few months. And I knew it wasn't, necessarily one fault or the other. I knew it was just this frustration. But one meeting I walk in, having already seen a couple emails go by, knowing it was going to be a hard one, and I get to the door, and one of the elders looks at me and goes, "No, Andrew," and shuts the door. And I'm sure he meant to shut it slightly, but you know how you kind of like let go of a door, you think it's going to shut the way you think? No, it was a whoom, and the door is right here. I'm saying inches from my nose. And I never realized that feeling of what a closed door can express in just that short of a moment. Not welcome, excluded, not able to be a part of the people that are on the other side of the door. And I was frustrated. I remember in that moment just going back to my wife and telling her all the things, and maybe it is time, and getting so frustrated. All the things I had kind of appeased, and I was like, I really wasn't upset with the elders. I knew it was two egos hitting. I knew I wasn't a part of it, and yet all of a sudden I was angry because a door had been put in my way and excluded me. And that's what Jesus is getting frustrated with at this point. But not because a door is shut in his face, but because a door has been shut to his people. In chapter 9, when this blind man is healed by Jesus, they bring him in to the leadership to ask him what's going on, and they don't like his answers, and so they finally bring in his parents to try and decide, was he really blind from birth? Was he making this up? And it says, his parents said, when they said no, they say no, but you can ask him. And the reason they said this, it says, his parents said this because they were afraid of the Jewish leaders who had announced that anyone saying Jesus was the Messiah would be expelled from the synagogue. Like, can you just imagine for a moment if the leadership here said, hey, by the way, if you start talking about this subject, you're no longer welcome. To pick a topic and say, hey, no, we don't talk about this, to the point that just don't show up if you're going to bring it up. It broke Jesus' heart to hear this. And it goes even further. When the blind man is brought back a second time to the leadership, and he says, they're like, what happened? And he's like, I've told you. I don't know who this guy is, but I know I was blind and now I see. And he is ready to give his life to Christ. And he's like, are you ready too? And they're like, no. And this is what they tell him. You were born a total sinner, they answered. Are you trying to teach us? And they threw him out of the synagogue. And depending on how that word is used, to be thrown out could have meant he was expelled, never welcome back. And Jesus found this man, and he worshiped him, and he came to Jesus. And so this is why it's interesting that the very next story is this sheep passage, where Jesus says, no, I am the gate. I am the one who gets to decide. How many of you have ever heard the word gatekeeping? We use it in all sorts of manners. I hadn't even thought about this until Kaylin brought it up in the office, and I thought, it's true, we do a lot of gatekeeping. Happens in the music industry, happens in the technology industry, in medication. It happens a lot of times. I'm going to use a silly one. Sometimes we talk about gatekeeping in the sense of knowing something that others don't. You're not a true fan unless you know this. And so I bring you this. Anyone know who this is? Other than my son, who I already asked? Not having the teens is really hurting me for this. Huh? Not Mad Hatter. This is from Harry Potter. I'll give a little extra help. Peeves. Now, if you're a lover of the movies, you're probably sitting here going, who in the world is Peeves? This is one of the best things of books versus movies. This is how we call you The true fans. This is the gatekeeping moment that I always use. In the movies, they wrote this character out. So you only know this character if you read the books. And so I always used to joke that you were only a true fan because only true fans read the books. Now that's ridiculous, right? If you truly take a moment to step back and listen to yourself, it is ridiculous for me to say you can't be a fan of Harry Potter unless you've really only read the books. I'd be excluding my dad in this moment, who only saw the movies, even though all of our family read the books. You can enjoy something without having to enjoy it the same way others do. And yet, a lot of times, I have been in situations where I was questioned, cornered, and really drilled to make sure, oh, when you say you're a fan of this, or you like this, or you believe this, what do you really mean by that? People do it in the church. That's what Jesus is dealing with. He's frustrated because he has seen time and time again people who are hurt, people who are sick, people who are lonely, who need the love that his God provides. And they've been told, you don't meet the right qualifications. Or, oh, I'm sorry, we need to up these. And it wasn't because God was putting in these rules, it was because the Pharisees were starting to add rules of their own to make sure, they were trying to make sure people followed what they thought was the right way. And yet Jesus says, no, I am the gate. Or as it says in Acts so well, for Jesus is the one referred to in the scriptures where it says, the stone that you builders rejected has now become the cornerstone. There is salvation in no one else. God has given no other name under heaven by which we must be saved. Now, I find this interesting. Like, think for a second. There is still an exclusion going on. You can't help that with a gate. There is those who are in and those who are out. It happens. The difference is when we talk about Jesus saying, I am the gate, he is the one who decides, not us. And when it says I am the gate, I love this, because when it says I am the gate, it actually means more of an opening than it does something that actually closes the way. Because you see, this is what a sheep pen looked like in the ancient days. What they would do is they would gather stones and they would circle them up and they would get them high enough that the sheep couldn't jump out. And depending on what was around them, they would either put rocks in a way that they would slant up to keep something from trying to jump over that it would cut them, or they would even take these bramble thorn bushes and place them around the top. But they would always leave an opening. And in that opening would go one of a couple things. If they had the resources, they would kind of block it off with either a larger stone or the brambles themselves, or in some cases, the shepherd themselves would become the gate. And they would stand there. They would lay there. So the gate is open. It's open. It's all about, do you know the person who is the gate? That's what Jesus is trying to get at when he's talking about this. He says, do you know the one by which you can be saved? That's what he goes on to say in the next verse. He says, yes, I am the gate. Those who come in through me will be saved. They will come and go freely and will find good pastures. I love this because what he's saying is he says, no, it's only through me. He goes, but coming through me is what saves. It's funny because doors have another thing that they do. They protect. The reason we lock our door is because we're keeping whatever's on the outside from getting in. Not because we're excluding those on the outside, but because we understand we live in a harsh, dangerous world. That was the same with the shepherds at the time. They had to protect the sheep. There was things out in the wilderness. We see, these lovely hills of green pastures and babbling brooks and kind of Psalm 23. We'll get to that in a second. But the truth is there was also wolves, mountain lions, bandits, and it was the job of the shepherd to watch over the sheep. They would put their life in between the sheep and everything else that was out there, because the sheep needed protected. I was really struggling because we're also doing the I Am the Good Shepherd in a couple weeks. But I really just had to use this. The truth is, sheep aren't stupid, but they do need a shepherd. They need someone to lead them because they so often, without help, find themselves in bad situations. And the first video I thought of was the video I've seen countless times, and it's funnier every single time. So let me just show you this video. This is a sheep that has gotten stuck in a ditch that they're plowing for a pipe. And we're so thankful he's free. I'm going to let it play again for a second while I talk, just because it's one of those that just gets better over time. I will probably show it again in 2 weeks just to get us started. Sheep need protection. The funniest, there was another video. It was too long and it was clunky, and I wanted to show it. But it was this picture of these sheep, and the woman is videoing. It's her sheep, and she looks at these sheep, and they're on this other side of the fence, and they just have this longing look. And she looks at the sheep, and then she comes over here, and it's the nice pen where some of the sheep are warm, and it's clearly starting to rain, and they're under the shelter. And it's these other sheep, and they're just looking at the other sheep going, oh man, that would be great. And then she turns the 180 around, and behind them is the open gate. It's open, it's already there, but the sheep need someone to say, hey, and it shows her walking out and saying, hey, this way, and they naturally follow her in. I mean, it's just that simple. The truth is, we all need that. We need someone to follow, because the truth is, we don't always get it right. We're imperfect. And so we need one who has gone before us to say, this is what it means to live a life that honors God. We need that protection. And it's funny because I always think of this, and I think of my own kids and the rules that we put in place. We say, hey, you can't go out in the street. Hey, you can't stay up late. Hey, you can't have that much candy. And what do the kids say? That's not fair. I don't like that. You're wrong. They fight, they scream, they get frustrated, and yet we as parents know they're idiots. They just don't know better. And it's funny, I was thinking, as I was preparing this, I was thinking of that same story of the door being shut in my face and the frustration I felt. And the truth is, maybe this is my optimistic side, maybe this is me seeing the silver lining, but the truth is, the more I've thought about that story over the years, the more I realize, yes, it might not have been handled the right way, but that elder was trying to protect me. He had saw how toxic their meetings were getting. He had seen what was happening, and he realized that they were at an impasse with the minister at the time, and he didn't want that to affect how I felt about them and the situation in the church in general. Yes, that might have been a better conversation to have had with me and then shut the door, or simply said, hey, can we talk later, and shut the door. But the truth is, that door was shut not to exclude me, but to save me, so that I could not be brought down by what was going on in the moment. That's what Jesus says when he says, listen, I came to save. And yes, that does mean that sometimes I'm going to have to shut doors. Sometimes that means I'm going to have to protect you. And other times I'm going to open, so you can go to the green pastures. Like, that's the best part about a door, right? It goes both ways. He's not saying, I'm keeping you to keep you in this pen forever. He's saying, no, there comes a time where I will open the door and let you out and enjoy the life you have. Kaylin beat me to the punch this morning. It just shows that the Spirit is working and great minds think alike. Because all I could think of was Psalms 23. The Lord is my shepherd. I have all that I need. He lets me rest in green meadows. He leads me beside peaceful streams. He renews my strength. He guides me along right paths, bringing honor to his name. Even when I walk through the darkest valley, I will not be afraid, for you are close beside me. Your rod and your staff protect and comfort me. You prepare a feast for me in the presence of my enemies. You honor me by anointing my head with oil. My cup overflows with blessings. Surely your goodness and unfailing love will pursue me all the days of my life, and I will live in the house of the Lord forever. When Jesus says he's the gate, it's not just to keep us away from things, but it's to give us wonderful things. A life of peace, a life of love, a life of joy. That's why he comes back to this message in verse 10 and says, the thief's purpose is to steal and kill and destroy. My purpose is to give them a rich and satisfying life. Listen, there's a lot of things out there that want to tell you what it's like to get the good life, to get that abundant life, to get a life better than the rest, the full life. And they promise it in so many ways. Instant gratification. Whatever makes you feel good, just do it. Why would you separate yourself from what makes you feel good? Absolutely, indulge yourself, enjoy. Only to find yourself less satisfied and unfulfilled. We're told it's okay. As soon as you get enough money or power or authority, or as soon as you find the beauty that you need or the thing that you need or whatever else, fill in the blank that you need, then you will have the good life. Only to find that you've given up so much in the chasing of one thing to find nothing else in your hand. We have thousands upon thousands of self-help books that tell you this is what you have to do to be happy. This is all it takes. And they list out one thing after the other. And we live in a world where depression and anxiety is through the roof. Our world promises a lot, and yet it can never fulfill. But the truth is, religion does it too. That's what the Pharisees were doing. I don't know how many times I've talked to someone. This is the one that breaks my heart every time. Honestly, there's very few things that affect me the way this one does. It's when I talk to someone, either inviting them to church or someone who's new to church, and they tell me the phrase, I'm not good enough. And it's not that, because that one's easy. It's because I quickly say, well, neither am I. But it's when they say, I'm not good enough, and they tell me a story of how someone told them they weren't good enough. How they weren't welcomed at this church because of X, Y, and Z. How they weren't allowed to be a part because, well, we had this moment. A close friend of ours at one point was telling me about how teen pregnancy, elders brought her in, had a conversation, and she was given two options: leave the church or go before the entire church to seek forgiveness. I heard that story and my heart broke. I was like, are you kidding me? Still, people from that church reach out to her and have invited her to come back. But they've already lost that point, right? So let me be the first, if you've not heard, that you are welcome. There is nothing you have done that can separate you from God's love. And that's what's so wonderful is that Jesus says, no, I am the gate. Listen, you can go to self-help books. You can go to a lot of things. You can try and do it your way. But the way you find rest, the way you find that protection, that security, that fulfillment that you're looking for is through me. I am the gate, he says. And to those of you who have heard this 20, 30, 100 times, I do remind you of one other story. The story of the 10 virgins who are waiting for the wedding banquet. There's another door in this one, because that word door, gate, can be door or gate. And that word is used in another time. In the parable where these 10 virgins both have lamps, 5 of them brought extra because you never knew when the groom would show up because he was traveling from another place. 5 did not. They fall asleep. The watchman sees the groom coming in the distance late at night. They wake up. They realize the lamps have gone out. Those that brought extra start preparing theirs. The others have to run off and try and buy some. While they're gone, the groom shows up. They enter through the door, and the door is closed. The 5 who went to buy extra came back. And it says this, it says, but while they were gone to buy oil, the bridegroom came. Then those who were ready went in with him to the marriage feast, and the door was locked. Later, when the other 5 bridesmaids returned, they stood outside calling, Lord, Lord, open the door for us. And because I forgot to put the other verse, I'll just sum it up. It says, he says, I don't know you. Be gone. The door is open. Jesus says, I am the door. I'm right here. He goes, but there is a time coming where the door will be locked. And he says, so you have a choice right here, right now. Choose me. He goes, are you tired of doing it your way? Are you tired of thinking that you know what's best? He says, I am the gate. Come through me.